want to jump right into the leadoff because we got a big leadoff today, and it's going to focus on one man, and that man is Justin Verlander, who was in town with the Houston Astros this week. And there were a lot of burning questions that the Detroit media needed to ask him, right? Are you coming back to Detroit? Which every Detroit Tiger fan wants to know. And when, not if, but when you get into the Hall of Fame, are you going in as an Astro or are you going in as a Tiger? And I want to kind of talk about both of those things, right? Because back in 2017, yours truly was actually the one that broke the Justin Verlander news. There was a lot of discussion of whether he would get traded or not, and I was first on that news way back then. And I always thought, and I always believed that Justin Verlander would be back. But then this rebuild happened, and I'm not so sure about it anymore. Let's just put it that way. So asking these two questions, right? Will you come back to Detroit? Will you go into the Hall of Fame as a Tiger? JV had some comments on them, and I do want to read those comments to you, and you can find them on Detroit Sports Nation as well, reported by W.G. Brady, on what he answered and what he said. And he said on his comments to return to Detroit, he said, I'm always open to the idea. It was not explored last offseason. Remember, last offseason was his free agency, where he signed a 1-year, $25 million deal with the Astros to come back. He said it wasn't explored last offseason. The Tigers never really reached out. Felt like they understood that they really weren't in a place for me yet. Maybe, I don't know. I never asked, but it never really came up. But he did establish in those comments that he does want to play for good teams. Listen, the guy's 39 years old. He doesn't want to go through rebuilds. He wants to go to teams that are ready to contend right now, which the Tigers are not. Now, could they be? Yeah, potentially. Could that be like a one final hurrah? Maybe. But this is not the time or the place for Justin Verlander to come back to Detroit, because this team would just waste whatever contract they gave him. Maybe next offseason, the following offseason, who knows? It all is going to depend on what a GM that comes in does. But then he was also asked about the Hall of Fame. And his answer was pretty honest. He said, quite honestly, I don't think about it. He said, I have a lot of time left on the clock, and I think that that's going to determine a lot of things. I've had a good run here in Houston. I don't know if I'll still be here in the coming years. And if I played until I was 45, that's 6 more years. Might be less, might be more, who knows? But that's still a significant chunk of my career. So it's not a very fair question at this point in time. But I know Detroit will always have a special place in my heart and in my career. And what that looks like when I retire, I just can't answer right now. Don't have all the information. Honest answer, JV. I take that and say, tell me you're going in as an Astro without telling me you're going in as an Astro. And I think that there's actually some evidence that backs that up. But I think that he's right. Making a determination about that right now would be way too long. Here's what I will say right from Jump Street before we get into these stats and kind of compare would he go in as an Astro or not. If Justin Verlander comes back to Detroit, he'll go into the Hall of Fame as a Tiger. If he does not, the chances are less than 50% that he goes in as a Tiger. And here's why, okay? Some stats. When Justin Verlander was in Detroit, he went 183 and 114, which is a 616 winning percentage. He had a 3.49 ERA, a 119 WHIP, a 3.48 FIP, and a 3.10 strikeout to walk ratio. He was Rookie of the Year in 2006, Cy Young in 2011, Cy Young runner-up in 2012 and 16, and was the MVP in 2011. Since he's gone to Houston, he's 59 and 18, which is a 766 winning percentage, a 2.30 ERA, a .84 WHIP, a 2.96 FIP, and his strikeout to walk ratio has more than doubled at 7.15 strikeouts to walks. He won the Cy Young in 2019, and he's the odds-on favorite, barring, some type of catastrophe returning from the IL in 2022. He was a Cy Young runner-up in 2018. He was the ALCS MVP in 2017, and don't discount this, the World Series champion in 2017. Those are the stats. He's been like a fine wine, JV ages, right? He's gotten better as time has gone along. So let's look at the contract details and try to come to a conclusion here. He's signed a 1-year, $25 million contract off of Tommy John surgery, where he did not pitch in 2021 at all. I think he pitched 6 innings in 2020 and then missed all of last year. But the Astros signed him to a 1-year, $25 million deal with a player option if he hit 130 innings pitched. So if he hits 130 innings pitched in 2022, he can then exercise his player option. He's already passed that. He's at like 154 and 2/3 innings pitched so far this year. So he can exercise that option. But the question is, with as well as he's pitching, will he exercise that $25 million option, or will he decline it and look for a payday like Max Scherzer did? Well, he recently told The Athletic's Ken Rosenthal in August, said, I haven't made my decision to opt out yet. Look, I have to finish out the season. I have to finish healthy. Obviously, if things continue to go the way they are, and knock on wood, everything goes the way I think everybody would hope, then I would probably opt out. I pitched pretty darn well. And yeah, JV, you have pitched pretty darn well. So here's the conclusion. Here's what I'm coming to. JV's been a better pitcher in a smaller sample size, to be sure, but he has gotten better since he's been with the Astros. He has also won more when he's with the Astros, and he also has a World Series championship trophy with the Astros. The only way that Justin Verlander goes into the Hall of Fame as a Detroit Tiger is if he finishes his career in the Old English D. I just don't think, as much as I want him to, and the fan inside of me is like, come back home, JV, we're not in a position to bring him home. And that's a failure of Al Avila. That's a failure of this roster that's been built. There's no reason that after 5 years, you're not in a position to sign a legacy of your own that you traded away to re-sign him for one more run. There's no reason at all. But yet here we are, speculating as to whether or not JV will finish his career in Detroit, because we're just not good enough to have a pitcher like him right now. We're not good enough to sign a pitcher like him right now. So here's my conclusion, and here's my prediction. There is a 75% chance that Justin Verlander enters the Hall of Fame as a Houston Astro. And there's about a 40% chance that he returns to Detroit at all. And that might not sit well with a lot of Detroit fans. I understand that. It might not sit well with some baseball fans. I get that as well. But the truth is, you got to put yourself in a position to be able to sign people like him, and they just have not been able to do that. So that's going to do it for the leadoff.